As a continuation, now I'll refer to some of the episodes which clearly tell us about the efforts of this great leader in building and rebuilding the national scene. You know, in this arena of fundamental requirement called education, in this arena of health, in the arena of social welfare, in the arena of international affairs, economy, national issues, science and technology, culture, sports, defense, security, whatever the issues that you take up, his impact was profound, both at the national and international level. I was looking at some of his public utterances to make out what he is in terms of a leader. Again, from a ethical perspective. I was also trying to look at some of the episodes that we have seen during his reign, either in one or the other capacity, and how it has shaped the entire political course that India has travelled since the time when this entire path was laid down during his reign. If any one of you is really fond of knowing PV completely, you have one place that you can visit any time. There is a library in Begumpet which is called as Swami Ramananda Tirtha Memorial Library, that has been run by Swami Ramananda Tirtha Memorial Trust with all the effort this library was set up in Begumpet, and PV has managed to collect somewhere nearly 10,000 odd books which are there placed in this library. You can go and read them for no cost at all. We know that he served as law minister, information minister, health minister, education minister, at the center, foreign minister, and whatever the knowledge that he has accumulated and whatever the information that he is trying to accumulate, all that has been kept in this particular library. It's a very rare library. You will just relish by looking at the books belonging to various languages such as English, Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, in all of these where he was fluent. You know, I could recall the speech that he gave at a plenary session of United Nations that we see in general in September, and in those days they used to be held either in September or October. In 1989, as Foreign Minister of India, he addressed the UN General Assembly at its plenary session. As you remember, this was the time when Germany was seeing unification, and this was the time when Soviet Union was also on the rampage. That means clearly world order was seeing some significant shift. It was tectonic in its nature. This was the time when we had Secretary General in the form of Perez de Cuellar, who has led United Nations amidst this crisis situation, and as a responsible nation, India must remember that his leadership must be upholded and further strengthened in order to see that world braces past this crisis situation. So in his entire diplomatic wit, PV tried to use the specific diplomatic expressions whereby he tried to consolidate not only multilateralism but also he tried to consolidate India's position in these world affairs, even amidst those crisis situations that the globe was facing and also India was facing at the domestic front, as a responsible nation in the form of a democratic republic. We showed to the world through the words of PV why democracy really is fruitful to the entire world. He says 1989 is the year of consolidation. You see this expression consolidation, and he sees this year as a year of consolidation. In fact, it is so. And because of this year of consolidation, we must remember that, according to PV, there has to be a much enhanced role of the United Nations in international affairs, either in terms of peacekeeping or in terms of observation. He recalls that in each and every corner of troubled regions of the world and everywhere where it has been functioning, it has been creditably discharging its functions according to him. You see how he is trying to strengthen the position of UN by carrying on the responsibility of this entire democratic republic that he was carrying along with him on his shoulders. He calls this a very critical contribution from UN, to which India is in complete support of. And he fondly recollects in this speech that the year before such consolidation, which was the year of many a number of crises because of the sheer end that we were reaching in terms of Cold War, UN was awarded Nobel Peace Prize, particularly for its peacekeeping efforts. That means this award actually went to UN peacekeeping forces, in which India's role was exemplary. He recalls this. You see how, with this expression called consolidation, with this expression called an enhanced role for UN in international affairs, with this expression called peacekeeping or observation teams in the every corner of the world where it was creditably doing and discharging its function, with this expression called critical contribution, by recalling that UN peacekeeping forces were given the Nobel Peace Prize for all their efforts in ensuring peace and order and tranquility and the harmony in the entire world. He tried to strengthen the position of UN, where indirectly what we are trying to say is he is trying to strengthen multilateralism in the world as against a world order that might emerge in the form of a unipolar world with the demise of Soviet Union, with the end of Cold War, which he didn't want, which was unwanted for by any responsible nation in the world, because we have seen the ill effects of such a political order in the globe. Hence, he immediately recalls the prompt leadership and the assuring leadership of then UN Secretary General that I was referring to, Perez de Cuellar. He fondly refers to one of the reports of UN in this speech, where it eloquently brings forth enormous fruits that the world can enjoy by adopting and resorting to multilateralism. By replacing a bipolar or unipolar world that might emerge. Here you must remember the words that he has uttered in this speech. He says, earlier multilateralism amidst this scene of Cold War had been an ideal. He doesn't refer to Cold War, but indirectly this is what he is reference to. Multilateralism is an ideal. However, he says, in this year of consolidation, multilateralism is no longer an ideal. He says it has become a necessity. You see how he understood this entire political transformation that was occurring at the international level. He says it is no longer an ideal. It has become a necessity. The situation is the same even today. These words are worth referring to hence. Given the growth in ultra-nationalism that we are seeing in every corner of the world, given the crisis-like situations that the various nations which are facing in the world, not only because of the pandemic but also because of the various policy level decisions that they have taken, by looking at this crisis in their own way, it has really dismantled this fundamental requirement called multilateralism. Whether it is peace or tranquility or harmony or international security. Without multilateralism, it's just impossible to achieve these objectives at the political level. Hence, these words are of utmost importance even in today's situation. It's no longer an ideal now. It has become a necessity, and there is an ultimate validity of this entire necessity that we are seeing today. Why? Here you must again note his infinitely praiseworthy expressions that he has used. You see how politically strong man he was. That was the time when the world was witnessing a nuclear arms race. This was the time when world started recognizing the degradation of the environment. You know these debates that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has held since 1988, which has led to the emergence of those 3 international treaties, including the one on biodiversity and need for its recognition throughout the globe. He expresses this in an unambiguous words. Given the threat posed to human survival by the nuclear arms race, given the threat posed to the human survival due to the degradation of the environment, given the threat posed to human survival by other non-military threats to security, please quote this entire expression, non-military threats to security, where he identifies as security threats which are non-military in their nature, structure and scope, such as poverty, underdevelopment, unemployment, overpopulation, inequality, both within nations and amongst nations collectively. See how at the socio-political level he could clearly recognize this socio-economic and political phenomenon as threats to one's national security and threats to even international security. Hence, he calls for resorting to multilateralism. This is how PV's political capital was immense. They were, more importantly, timely. Hence, he says United Nations is the linchpin of multilateralism that we must adopt and resort to. There is no other possibility, according to him. Because he clearly knew that it has been global in its scope, it has been universal in its membership, and it has also been mandated by a treaty in the form of charter. All these three put together, it can have its global role, but no other organization can really take the seat of UN which has now. Hence it says India welcomes with renewed confidence that UN must take up this issue of multilateralism without being partial, without being selective, which had been one of the problems that we have encountered with UN in its entire journey in the international affairs. He was never skeptical to point out this reality. Unambiguously he has pointed out. Hence he says, in order to adopt multilateralism which is not partial and selective, he says UN must have a multilateralism which is total and all embracing. I must also recall here that in the same speech, in a brief, I'll try to do that. He refers to the efforts of Namibia's independence, which was also under the colonial rule even now, and Namibia was about to get its independence. So he says this will significantly end the illegal occupation of that country. However, but at the same time, he doesn't lose sight of the situation in South Africa, because South Africa was still reeling under severe adverse effect of apartheid regime. We know that. So the racial atmosphere in South Africa is still intact, and that must also undergo a significant transformation. He realizes that. So he calls for the demonstration of the real political leadership, where it must show its willingness, as he uses this expression, to negotiate unconditionally with the genuine representatives of the people of South Africa to restore normalcy in South Africa in place of the apartheid regime which is carrying on the racial based activities which are political, social and economic in nature. He calls for ending state of emergency in South Africa. He calls for immediate release of the political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela. He renews his optimism over the Palestinian question. He calls that durable peace in Asia, particularly West Asia, is impossible without having a justice-based comprehensive settlement which realizes the comprehensive rights of Palestinian people as an inalienable right for their self-determination. You see the expressions. And recognition of all the states in the region, including Palestine and Israel, to live in peace and harmony and security within internationally recognized borders in this region of West Asia. This will really convince us that he never lost sight of the purpose for which UN itself has built its entire structure. He didn't lose sight of any of these. He refers to the prolonged civil strife that was going on in Lebanon, because of which there was a clear fracture in the country's political situation, economic framework, including the possibility of constitutional transformation. So whatever the organization that we have in the form of Arab League, because of these situations in West Asia, was really fractured. Even though Arab League at the regional level, according to him, tries to put in its own peace efforts, it must be supplemented or possibly get associated with the efforts from the UN Security Council. He significantly refers to our today's very close friends, both Vietnam and Cambodia. I already told you that the Vietnamese forces were in occupation of Cambodia, and this was the time when Vietnamese troops have seen a major withdrawal from Cambodia, and where he lauds the effort of UN peacekeeping forces in ensuring the smooth transition, and whatever the various factions that we saw in Cambodia which tried to establish their sway over these regions were subjected to dialogue, negotiating table. So he fondly calls for end of any kind of interference, any kind of intervention in these internal affairs of Cambodia by stating that people of Cambodia can politically exercise their right to determine their own destiny, which is what central in ensuring and continuing multilateralism in the world. You can't intervene in the sovereign political affairs of one particular nation by transplanting your own ideas into that nation. He also refers to the situation between Iran and Iraq. He refers to the situation in Persian Gulf. He refers to the situation of Afghanistan, which is very fundamental in Indian scenario. He also refers to the situation in Korean Peninsula, where we find still, according to him, that there is an overwhelming division that we see, which is hurting the peace, reconciliation and dialogue. And as we know, because of our efforts since the emergence of Korean War, where we tried to negotiate for the end of this Korean War, where our role was very, very instrumental in the early part of their independence, we expressed our real moral right to take up this issue on the floor of UN General Assembly through the words of P.V. Narasimha Rao. He again reiterates in unambiguous words that India would support all efforts aimed at the peaceful reunification of Korea in conformity with the principle of universality with which India supports the aspirations of the Korean people to contribute actively towards the realization of the purposes and the principles of the United Nations through representation in this entire world body. See how he utters these expressions. He refers to the substantial effort of the world to end this arms race, particularly in relation with the nuclear arms. He refers to the pressing need for a comprehensive chemical weapons convention, and even if you read now in India yearbook, that is the only convention which is mentioned as the one which is very, very significant. Similarly, he refers to the efforts from the globe to reject multilateralism on the economic front by resorting to what is called as protectionism, which according to him continues to constrain the developing countries in their efforts to increase their exports. So decisions on global economic issues that affect developing countries continues to be the key issue where it has excluded their due role in the global economic development. You see how all these issues are so clearly rooted in even today's reality. So he calls for collective self-reliance here amidst such conditions of the globe where there is a lot of unjust and irrational policies which have been taken up, and this is what is actually hurting then what is called as Uruguay round of negotiations, which has further led to the emergence of WTO. Hence he calls for what is called as self-reliance. Here his self-reliance according to him must be achieved through what is called as South-South cooperation, which constitutes according to him a principal plank of the platform of the non-aligned movement, where the developing countries could voice themselves independent of the bipolar world that we have then. You see how it is so fundamental even today. He refers to drug abuse, he refers to illicit trafficking, he refers to the imperative nature of the entire international community to cooperate against such a menace. He refers to environmental issues which are at the forefront. And ultimately, in the same speech, he gives it a moral tone by saying that it is the truth and non-violence which has won the freedom for India, and this has remained our vision for the entire world. And given this wisdom that we have, which is different from the conventional wisdom that the entire world might showcase, he says there is clear superiority of the moral force that we have shown to the world clearly over the military force. Hence, he says non alignment is clearly a superior moral force against the bloc politics which are played by the bipolar world. When people of the world are passionately desirous of this peace, we must certainly take note of this will of the common man all over the world. This clearly showcases us the leadership of P.V. Narasimha Rao.